Hi there, this is Terry, the host of the Animation Industry Podcast, and I really can't believe that I've been running this podcast for nearly 3 years, every single week. This chat is with Justin Weg, a senior animator with close to 15 years of experience in the industry, mostly at Blue Sky as a character lead, and now at Illumination MacGuff. He's animated on movies like Spies in Disguise, Rio the Peanuts movie, and Ice Age 3, and on the side he's also a teacher at Animschool teaching Class 5 on character performance. And if all this animation wasn't enough for you, he is also a stop-motion hobbyist doing that on the side. So, in our chat, Justin is going to share what it was like going through the closure at Blue Sky, his experience as a CG character animator, and how he got into the industry in the first place. So now, without further ado, let's jump in. Hi, Justin.
Hey, how's it going?
Podcast. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. I hear you've listened to a couple episodes.
Yeah, I've listened to a fair amount. Definitely in some long car drive.
Like, what's a fair amount? Like 10? Like
more than 10.
You could have listened to 120.
No, I don't know if I listened to all of them. I've definitely listened to a lot of the stop motion centric ones because I've been interested in that. But a lot of more recent ones for sure, and just. Yes, yeah, so some really good stuff. Thank you for doing this.
Me putting you on the spot right now to say how much you love this podcast. I'm being
watch it, listen, subscribe, click below.
I don't even know if there's I guess you can subscribe to like iTunes or whatever, but whatever. Yeah. So yeah, let's just get into some of these topics right away. So you were at Blue Sky when things went down and it was canceled, and then you're at Illumination now. And what can you share about that whole experience and being told you don't have a job anymore and scrambling to find something new when you're in the middle of your career? Like, tell me what you can.
Yeah. I was at Blue Sky for almost 13 years. And on February 9th of this past year, so we were all at home during the pandemic, working on some projects, some unannounced stuff. And we basically just had this unfortunate day where we were told that the studio was being shut down, basically due to COVID and some other reasons. But it was a sad day. It was the entire studio got shut down. We had all these brand new renovations in the building too that were we're gonna make the building already more awesome than it was. It was a sad thing. Being home for COVID was basically being away from everybody, and then learning that we couldn't see each other, and we're learning that the studio was being shut down. It was very tough, that we couldn't all sort of like come together, give each other hugs. Like, it's a lot of virtual hugs, I guess, going on. And but it was tough, just losing my home where I basically grew up as an animator over that time.
Well, 13 years, that's quite a long time. And I'm assuming you had no plans to you were continuing on envisioning yourself at Blue Sky going.
Yeah. I'm from New York, from Queens originally. So Blue Sky originally was located in White Plains, which is about a half an hour outside the city. And then they moved to Greenwich, Connecticut in 2008. So I was in the original studio for about 2 months. And then, it's come 2008. We had like this 2-week break where they moved in, like they did all these renovations, and it was like around the holidays. So we came in come January, and I was working on an Ice Age 3, Dawn of the Dinosaurs. And it was always like my dream to work there once I knew I wanted to do animation as a career, because I was it's close to home, it's close to family, it's this blockbuster studio, makes amazing movies. So it was like a dream come true. So when it shut down, it was it hurt, but
yeah. Did you? Yeah, I can imagine. And gosh, did you feel afraid of not being able to find work again?
Yeah,
when you heard, what was your initial? Because for me, my perspective, I'm 13 years, super amazing animator, should have no problem. But in your mind, what's going through your mind?
I immediately texted friends within 15 seconds after I heard the news, hey, are you guys hiring?
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I was just, because I didn't expect it. It was a big shock. I think most people.
You had no clue it was being.
No. I think
15 seconds after the announcement, you're like, "Give me a job."
Yeah, I mean, I was nervous. Like I was ended up freaking out. Like I told my wife like after the whole thing happened, and I was already had reached out to people, so maybe some other people knew before she did because it was just out of pure panic in that moment. And I had a good, not afraid or ashamed to admit, a good cry at that moment and with her, and it was just a very emotional moment. But yeah, I didn't really know what to expect. I that was the only place that I really worked for such a long period of time in the feature film industry. I mean, I had small gigs beforehand, which were great and great learning experiences as well. But yeah, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know what the industry was like, especially during COVID. Like I knew that some other studios were working remote as we were over the past year before they shut us down. But yeah, it was a scary time for sure. But I definitely started immediately within that day and like the 2 days following it, just like emailing recruiters and emailing friends. Like I've worked with tons of people over the past almost 13 years that I was there that ended up at tons of other studios all over the country and the world. So I didn't really know what my plan was, but I hope that there was something that was out there.
So when you were emailing, your friends and recruiters, were you like, "Hey, I'm a I've been at Blue Sky for 13 years. Here's an amazing demo reel of my stuff." Or you just like, what were you going off a reputation, or like everybody just knew Blue Sky employees were like hitting the ether?
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely like my subject title for my emails was like Blue Sky Animator, Justin Weg, like hello, whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
Just like because I was just trying to like catch the attention. I mean, I think it just became pretty instant knowledge in the industry. Everyone just started hearing
Yeah.
about it like that day within hours, and I think it even was reported online right away. Um, so yeah, I mean, people automatically are like, before I even like told them like that the studio closed, like friends, whatever, they're like, oh yeah, I heard. And but no, I mean, I basically just said like, hi, so and so, or hi, friend. Like, I've been there's Justin, you may remember me, whatever, or I've been a Blue Sky for the past almost 13 years. Here's my demo reel. I'm looking for new opportunities, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I was just trying to see what was out there. I was like open to really anything because I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know if I was going to get a job. I have a family, to support and 2 kids and house, mortgage, all that kind of stuff. So I was just hoping for the best.
So how many bites were you getting? You reached out to everybody you could think of.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I made like this Google spreadsheet where I basically just like put down every studio that I applied to with every contact or recruiter that I did hear from or didn't hear from. And it took a little while, but I mean, a little while. I mean, within like the week, I had a fair amount of responses. And actually within a couple of days, maybe like definitely around 10. And then I started setting up some interviews. So it
Oh,
did go
wow.
pretty quick. And I was actually um, my acceptance to the job that I ended up taking in the end was within a month, I think, of the shutdown.
Hmm.
So I was definitely like searching for a while and just weighing my options and everything. But yeah, it was an interesting thing. I mean, I feel like one thing that I learned from it is because I was just sort of living in this bubble for so long in Blue Sky. Not like a negative bubble. I mean, it was a great bubble. I didn't really know what else was out there. Like I guess what I could bring to the industry, besides what I was already judged at and at Blue Sky, which again was an amazing place to grow and learn as an animator. And I worked with some incredible people. But getting out there and seeing what else was out there really opened up my eyes to other opportunities and other avenues to pursue. So.
Were you finding that you had to suddenly like niche yourself? Like, I'm a character animator or like something like that versus like, I can animate in CG, whatever you want, I'll try out. Like,
Yeah,
are you?
no, I mean, I always prefaced it, or my subject line was like character animator, or I said, hey, I'm a character animator. I mean, that's definitely what I'm most comfortable with. I mean, I feel like I could like to say I could animate almost anything, but I mean, I definitely haven't animated everything in the world. Like, there's some amazing car commercials where I'm like, I haven't animated like a car, like coming apart, or, they dissect things in these commercials, whatever. But I mean, I was just really open to whatever. Like I applied to some game companies. I applied to smaller companies that did like TV series. I applied to feature studios. I applied to some more commercial houses. I, was even looking into some like stop motion stuff, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Which I love your stuff again.
Thank you.
But yeah, I was just trying to see, like, I don't know, what can I do? And yeah, I just feel like character animation is like my bread and butter, I guess. And I just felt like I just wanted to keep on pursuing that if I could,
Yeah.
if
Maybe thinking back to like your first, when you were doing those original gigs before Blue Sky, and then when you got Blue Sky, like when you're starting out, especially like out of school or as like a junior animator, it's kind of a numbers game. You're just applying like literally everywhere to hope you can get any bites. But, after being in the industry for 13 years, which is quite a long time, and it sounds like you were playing a numbers game as well. Did you feel that you were getting more, a serious responses and interviews set up because of this? Or was it still like kind of random? You're just hoping for like a opportunity to come around?
I felt like, there was a slight tinge of the latter part, but I felt like it was more like I was getting more responses because of my experience and my like demo reel. Demo reel obviously played like a big part. It's funny, I just like recently posted on Facebook as like the memories came up and like my demo reel from like 2008 before I even like really started it.
I was going to ask you about that because I noticed you've been posting old stuff lately. Is this like an intentional thing to like get your name out into the?
No, that was just like just to my friends, just like, wow, I can't believe that's what it looked like back then. Like I'd like to think I came a long way, but yeah, I just feel like if I applied. I even felt like this back then when I applied to Blue Sky. I feel like every animator or artist says this. It's like, oh, if I applied with my stuff that I worked on then, now, or even like 10 years ago, like they wouldn't have hired me. Like, oh, it was all luck or whatever. But no, I feel like the experience that I went through and just the work that I had, like it definitely helped me get maybe more noticed or a foot in the door, as opposed to being a more junior. Like look, there's some amazing junior animators out there that get into these studios, and so I don't know. It's sometimes just like who you know, or like luck or whatever. But like I think just the work that I had and the experience I had definitely helped get me the bites
Nice.
that I had.
So how do you feel now that you're back working a steady thing?
I feel good. It was weird, not working for like, it was basically, we got the announcement in February and then closed in April officially. So it was sort of like weird not working for 2 months. And then I had like about a 3-4 weeks off where I was just like not really working. I was doing some stop motion stuff and just learning as much as I could. I'm a big like just continuing education person, just like following tutorials or whatever people release and YouTube stuff, whatever. And then I got back into it, and yeah, it's nice to be doing it again.
You didn't even take a vacation.
No, I did. I actually went to Arizona, to Sedona, which was really nice. So I did get to do that. But yeah, I it's always like on my mind. Like I just love what I do, and but yeah, it's nice. It doesn't feel like much has changed. Just what's changed is just like the environment. Like I'm at home in my basement, which I have been, as all of us have been in our homes for the past year. But going through this process and then starting a brand new job with new people in a new company is it's a learning experience for sure. But it's been fun. It's a lot of fun meeting cool people.
So you went through this whole experience. You were off work for like 2 months. Is there anything that you, looking back, would do differently, or going forward you do differently to make sure you have something kind of always in the works if this type of situation happens again, versus like your feeling of like scrambling and panic?
I feel like, well, first of all, I feel like the reason why I scrambled in panic, if you will, is just because like I didn't expect it, and
I would too.
Yeah, I think it was like a reasonable response, and I don't know. I feel like maybe I would have tried to work on some other tests on the side. Although again, I feel like my reel like had just my most recent work, but there was other projects we were working on in between, so I didn't have like my latest and greatest. But I don't know. I guess I don't know if there was much that I would do to prepare. Maybe learning some other skills. Like I'm not really like a rigger, but maybe I'd like take up some of that, or some modeling, maybe to try to make myself more marketable if like and when there were no animation positions available. But that stuff is cool and all, but I'm definitely more interested in like the performance aspect of the field. So no, I don't know if I really maybe I would maybe taken a little bit of a longer break or something, but I feel like I just wanted, I did feel like I was missing it, especially due to like, you know, being home during COVID. I wanted to get back into it and just animate.
So looking forward, I guess, you know, you've been character animator performance. Is this your thing? Is this like what you see yourself doing inevitably forever? Like, or are you trying to work your way up to like, you know, a lot of people want to become director or involved in story or whatnot. And I know that you originally went to school for like psychology.
Yeah, I did go to school originally for psychology. Yeah, we'll talk about that quickly. Yeah, I went to Binghamton University, which is a New York State school, and I didn't really know I wanted to do animation as a career then. But I had like this, I studied abroad in Australia like my senior year, and it's I'm like sort of soul searching. I was watching a lot of like Family Guy at that time, and I know it's the most super inspirational animation in my life at that moment. No, I mean I loved it. It was a lot of fun, but I sort of was like, oh, you know, what can I, you know, what do I really want to do? I was doing all the soul searching and just like watching a lot of cartoons, I guess, when I was down there. And actually Disney Toon Studio was down there at the time, the ones that do all the sequels. And I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to try to get an internship, even though I have no experience whatsoever. Maybe I'll do like an internship or a production assistant, whatever. And long story short, they ended up closing. So I didn't even.
So you just watched Family Guy and you're like, I'm going to get an internship doing this.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it. Actually, it's funny. What sent me to Australia was it sounds really cheesy, but like I was watching like Finding Nemo like the year before or something, and it took place in Australia. And I'm like, oh, I always wanted to go to Australia. That looks really nice in CG world. And I know, but
Base your life decisions on what some background artist created.
Exactly. So no, I did some like sort of soul searching, and just wanted to like I always enjoyed film. I enjoyed drawing. I enjoyed acting. I did some acting in college and high school, and like plays and stuff, and music, and it all just sort of came together. But yes, I didn't pursue the psychology thing, but in the end I was like, oh, when I first started animation, I was like, oh, it sort of helps me understand the character, you know, which I maybe understood more at that time, but I sort of like forgot some of the things that I've learned from psychology at least. But no, back to your original question. So where do I like see myself going? I don't know. I feel like I definitely enjoy the performance part. I've pursued in more recent years more like lead positions, which are more, I guess, not directing, but like supervising in a sense. So like I'd like to see it pursue that route. You know, I definitely, you know, I teach now also, so I feel like that's sort of like a mini supervisor.
Like supervising, you're not animating so much anymore as you are, I guess, directing or supervising other people.
Like it's a fine balance. I mean, I know I've had like supervisors who have done a little bit of both, but like definitely, yeah, less animating. So I don't know how much I'd like to pursue that as much. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I feel like I've always wanted to like create my own show. And in the past, it was like, I didn't really have like ideas, but like I sort of knew how to do things like from a technical standpoint, you know? But I don't know. I've like been thinking about some things recently, but yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of just seeing where this ride takes me, you know, being that
you just had to switch up in career. So
exactly. Yeah. So, you know, being that happened and just seeing where, you know, my next job where I am at Illumination takes me, you know, we'll just see how things go and how the industry evolves. And
nice. Yeah. So tell me, let's dial it back a little bit more. Tell me about the switch up from psychology to trying to pursue an internship at Disney with no.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was like literally like I never reached out to anybody at Disney Toon in Australia. It was literally like I just like Googled like animation studios in Australia. Like that was the first one that popped up, and I was studying for 6 months there, and I'm like, oh, that could be a good opportunity. And so yeah, I basically what happened is I didn't really pursue anything more at that point, except maybe just drawing some stuff, you know, little things on the side. In college, I did like the comic strip for my school newspaper. And growing up, my friends like always said like, oh, you know, you're gonna like be a cartoonist or whatever. So like I was always drawing things on the sides of my notebook, like I'm sure you did. Most
yeah, you know, no, people said the same thing to me, and I was like, no, Like, why?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Then later on, but so
Yeah.
how did
So
you actually get well, I know how you got the required skills, but maybe you can explain, because I also think, you know, I think it's interesting what you're going to tell me, because there's this like pressure that comes from, I don't know where you have to like seriously study animation for years in college. Like going to Sheridan College myself, it's a 4-year degree program, and they
mhm,
teach you like everything: life
yeah.
drawing, storyboarding, character design, animation, and 2D and CG, and like, and there's like this thought drilled into you that you're not going to be good enough until the end of these 4 years, and then you're good enough to just have like a basic internship. But like your stories, well, you can just tell me, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, basically the way it started out was after I graduated from college, I was like, okay, well, what do I really want to do? I wanted to animate. I didn't really know that I wanted to do it as a career growing up. I didn't really think I could do it as a career when I was growing up. So I always like, I didn't put two and two together. Like, oh, there's someone behind that pencil and paper. I remember going to Disney once and Disney World, and I saw the people doing it. But yeah, I was just like, okay, well, do I go back to school for animation? Do I have to go to a 4-year school? I just did the 4-year thing, and I was like, oh, maybe I do like a master's of like School of Visual Arts or Cal Arts or whatever. And I wasn't like good enough from like a portfolio standpoint to get into those places. But I remember I saw this school, online school, is like I think one of the first, if not the first, definitely the first online animation school. And I feel like it was like at the beginning of like the online school boom. But I saw Animation Mentor come up, which I think was the first of its kind. And I remember I was like following all these like student blogs. A lot of them were just like chronicling their progress throughout. And actually, I had followed this one guy, Jeff Kim, who ended up working at Blue Sky years later, shortly, and he was actually an alumnus of Binghamton University, where I went to college. So I reached out to him, and I was like, "Oh, hey, just tell me more about the school." And I remember, and we chatted a little bit, and I remember I actually, I really wanted to do it, and my parents knew I was interested in it, and I put like together this little like PowerPoint slide, like, this is why I should do this, and like printed out this whole paper, and I highlighted all these points, and I'm like, well, hi, Mom and Dad, like, this is why I want to do animation, and this is why the school is a great choice. And yeah, so I think 2006, because I graduated in 2005, so maybe it was the fall of 2005 or 2006 is when I started Animation Mentor, and it was a
Wait, so your parents were convinced after this PowerPoint?
oh
Were
yeah, they were
like,
just yeah.
he's thought about this, so we're sending him.
No, I mean, my parents are very supportive and still are, were then still are. But no, they were like, hey, if this is what you want to do, like, we fully support you, and very kind of them to let me pursue that. And yeah, no, it just worked out. But I mean, it was a hard road. I mean, even during my time during Animation Mentor, I think around class 4 or no, class 2. Class 2 was body mechanics. Class 4, I think, was like intro to acting. I was pursuing some internships. So I worked at the studio. Actually, I ended up being a production assistant at the studio called Curious Pictures.
This is not part of Animation Mentor.
Not part of, like, it wasn't, they didn't like offer internships or anything. It was just like, well, I like to get some real world experience if I can. Excuse me. And I had some like friends or contacts, and I reached out to this studio called Curious Pictures, which actually one of the founders was the guy, he co-created Pee-wee's Playhouse with Paul Rubens, and they did like a lot of they did like a show on HBO called Curious, or I forget what it was called, Totally Curious, something like that. But anyway, they were doing this Barbie movie. It was called The Barbie Diaries, and I was like, I wasn't really qualified at that moment to do animation, and there's actually motion capture, so they were shooting all the motion capture in-house. But I was like, hey, yeah, I interviewed, like, I'll do production assistant, I'll get your coffee, I'll do, faxing, whatever you want me to do. Remember faxing back in the day? Yeah, so it was just, I got to be exposed to everything at that point. I worked very closely with the director, Eric Fogel. I don't know if you know that name. He actually created Celebrity Deathmatch.
Oh, there you go. Hey.
So that's sort of, was like my first, like, I didn't think about stop motion back then, but
from Barbie Diaries to Celebrity Deathmatch.
Yeah, well, the other way around. He actually Celebrity Deathmatch.
Oh, the other, yeah, okay.
I think they rebooted.
that's
yeah, I think they rebooted Celebrity Deathmatch a couple years later, maybe. But yeah, so like that was all motion capture was shot in house, and I got to be on set with like the actors who like would do the motion capture for voices that were already pre-recorded, I think. And that was like shipped off to India. But yeah, it was like just like a constant, like I was in this environment where everyone was like, you know, modeling, rigging, doing some animation. And yeah, I did that while I was still doing Animation Mentor. So I was doing Animation Mentor like part-time at that moment, but then I pursued it full-time in the end. When I finished that, actually, I also did a production assistant job on a Polly Pocket thing, which was a very short thing, but that was really just like filing and photocopying stuff. But then when I finished Animation Mentor,
And the Animation Mentor was 2 years, right?
yeah, it was 18 months. Yeah.
18 months. That's
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah. It
That's
was
so
quick. But it was like the great thing about it was that it was just all like strictly focused like on animation.
Super
It wasn't
streamlined.
like, it wasn't like you want to do lighting, you want to do rigging. Like I think they've like updated things since then or changed some things, but then it was just strictly just animation focused. And then what was also great about it, it was like all my mentors were people who were working in the industry. I mean, I didn't have anyone who worked at Blue Sky at the time, but I learned from people at like ILM and some former Disney guys and Rhythm and Hughes at the time, and all over the place, video games too. But then so it was a great experience. And I actually, when I finished, I was sending my stuff to the people at Curious Pictures, one of my supervisors, or production people there, and then they saw my reel and they're like, oh, so we have this this feature that we're doing coming up, which was again, it was motion capture, but it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival that year, and it was called Chicago 10, which is based off of the trial of Chicago 7. I don't know if there's a live action movie that came out last year called the Chicago 7. I think that Aaron Sorkin directed. Anyway, this was a documentary / animated film, but again, more motion capture. And it was directed by Brett Morgan, who also did The Kid Stays in the Picture. And that was like, I was an animation intern then. So again, I was on set doing some motion capture shoots, like cleaning up motion capture. And then I was basically animating like faces and hands because they didn't capture the face back then, or the fingers and stuff. And then, yeah, from that point on, I just sort of got in with the crew there, and I was working on some other little things. I did like an Optimum online commercial there where it was like, actually it was kind of cool. It was like puppets, like live action puppets where they superimposed like CG mouths onto the faces, which actually didn't make it to air in the end, and they changed it, but it was cool. Cool nonetheless. But yeah, it was some good experience, and some other little gigs followed in between there, which I could talk about if you're interested.
So these like your experience in school and then these gigs here and there, they're what got you into Blue Sky?
Yeah, so in between, I also worked at this place called Super Ego Games, which was in New York City. It was a small video game company, like 12 people. We were creating this game called Rat Race, which was like sort of The Sims meets like The Office. I think like that's like when The Office really started becoming popular. So it was like a comedy game. There was a lot of sitcom. We had some writers from like Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and I think some guys who worked on like South Park, if I'm not mistaken. So I worked on this game for like 9 months, where I was doing like insane animation quotas for like some cycles, but like the cinematics were like a minute to 2 minute cutscenes that I had to do like in a week. So I mean, the quality wasn't that great, but I worked, actually how I got in there is I worked with a guy who I used to work with at Curious Pictures, this guy Willie, and it was a great learning experience. Long story short, the game didn't end up getting published. It tends to happen in the industry sometimes. Things you work on, they just don't see the light of day, which is it's fine. But again, it was a learning experience. And then after that, I worked on, I forget how I got it, but I worked for Real Effects remotely. I guess that was my first intro to remote work, only for like 8 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks on Open Season 2. And then through that time, there's some other little things here and there. I actually made a connection with a guy who I used to work with at Super Ego Games, this guy Jason, who was a sound designer there, and his brother-in-law was a animator at Blue Sky. So
connections.
Yep. So I reached out to him, this guy Scott, and I just like started working with him offline, just like saying like, oh, hey, here's my reel. Like, it was pretty crappy back then. But I had some stuff from Open Season 2. I felt like that was like really cool because like I got to work on a feature film, even though it went direct to DVD. But I was like, I loved the first open season, and I got to work on that. And then he sort of like helped me. I had already applied to Blue Sky, I think, once before that, and I got rejected. And then I don't know how it happened, but he helped me, or I just got in, or whatever. I always thank him to this day for getting me working at Blue Sky. And came in September 2008 as a temp, a project hire on Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs, and then 2 months later I was hired full time. So
Nice. I want to talk about your experience at Blue Sky, but I'm wondering, from going to Animation Mentor for 18 months, do you think you had picked up the skills that you needed to get into Blue Sky's like as a temp or like an introductory animator or whatever? Or
yeah.
do you think the 18 months prepped you to get those random gigs, which you learned enough at those gigs to get into Blue Sky by the end? Because I'm wondering if somebody's listening now and they're like, wanting to get in CG, or they're an animation mentor right now, or they're just graduated a program, or like, I don't know, they did a 4-year degree program but want to specialize. Like, do you, even, I guess, even as you see new graduates enter the industry now, is it enough to go to an online program like that and then get an entry level position?
I mean, I definitely think the schooling and the program had a huge influence on my career growth. I mean, I feel like I definitely grew a lot once I got into the industry, especially at Blue Sky, and I just learned so much there. But I mean, I definitely feel like I wouldn't have been where I was when I started at Blue Sky, nor any of those other studios, if I hadn't learned what I did at the school. There's so many great schools out there, and like, podcasts like yours that like give so much great advice to students. But I think it was a combination of things. I think it's also a matter of like what you put into it. I mean,
Right.
I worked with a lot of students back then who like weren't able to do the school full time. Like I had was fortunate enough to be able to do it at one point. So being able to put that much more time and effort into it, like, definitely helped. I think it's a little bit of everything.
And you were at Blue Sky for 13 years. Were you seeing new hires come right out of online programs?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. A lot of us from my class, if you will, of initiation into Blue Sky came like straight out of school. I mean, again, I had some little things in between, but there were some people who got hired straight out of Animation Mentor or other similar schools.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's a lot of connections that people had, like former students. I mean, I saw a lot of project hires come in that ended up getting hired full time, that were like their teacher was an animator at the studio. And so.
Yeah, I mean, that make it like I haven't taken online schools like Animation Mentor or whatever, but like one thing that I think about from time to time in my mind is like Sheridan College, which I'm technically in right now, is more of a generalist degree when it comes to, you learn a lot of 2D, hand-drawn, puppet, rig, 2D, CG, but you don't become like a mass, like you can take electives in CG all throughout, but you don't become like a focused just CG, for instance. So do you see new hires coming in from places like Cal Arts or Sheridan or Seneca as well, where it's more of a generalist? Or because I guess my thought is, I've also known people who have come out of a generalist degree and then realized that maybe their CG skills weren't up to par, and then they would take something like Animation Mentor on top to
and I know a bunch of people like that too. We definitely had a lot of hires from SCAD, and there was some from School of Visual Arts, and I think Sheridan, I think maybe one or two, but definitely the 4-year colleges. There's been some that the students focused on animation more, but definitely did these amazing short films, and they still knew how to rig and model and light and all the stuff that I didn't know how to do, or trying to learn more about. But it's definitely obviously helps if you want to be an animator or a lighter or whatever, to like focus on like just that one thing and be amazing at it. But I mean, obviously having those other skills really helps. I think one thing that was, I don't know if the Animation Mentor still does it now, but we did short films at the time. I think something that the studios looked for then, and I think still look for now, even just like in singular shots, and I definitely look for as a instructor and animator when looking at reels, is that just storytelling. And so if you're creating a short film, and a lot of these students from these bigger schools, these 4-year programs, would spend 4 years creating a short, or I don't know, 2 years, whatever it is. Like, I think studios definitely like appreciate that, like, because at the end of the day, like, we're all filmmakers and trying to make the best film possible. So I think, it definitely helps to have those other skills. But
So if I say I'm like, I don't know, I know I want to do CG, and I'm like, I want to work at a place like Illumination. I want to be a character animator, like my hero and idol, Justin. What should I focus on right now? Should I, because I'm also, I guess there's two questions. One is, what should I focus on? Should I just immediately go into the online CG schools? Because my second part of the question is, do you feel like you missed out on certain aspects of storytelling and art, like figure
yeah,
drawing or
yeah.
like storyboarding and cinematic stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely learned some of that stuff when I was in online schooling. And and then yeah, when I was in college doing psychology, like, I did take like a figure drawing class once I started getting more into like art and stuff. But I mean, it wasn't the same, and I didn't go to a school that specialized in that. But it was cool at the time, and I also did some summer programs before that. But anyway, to answer your question, I feel like, uh, I mean, I definitely feel like there's validity for learning all of those things. I'm not the best figure drawing artist, or like cartoonist or whatever, and I could feel like I could animate. So I feel like it definitely helps to know those things. I don't know if they're essential. I mean, there's so many great resources out there, just even besides like online schools. Like, I teach at Animschool. There's the other school, tons of schools, but there's also some great YouTube tutorials out there, like free stuff that you can just learn from. That people have been really generous to offer their time and just teach students. So, I mean, I think what any student that wants to like learn animation should focus on is definitely the basics. Like, obviously, don't jump right in. I'm sure this as like a stop motion guy, although I know your like early high school stuff that you did, like this crazy stuff with like all these clay characters. But obviously, like, focus on like the bouncing ball, and really nail that, and like pendulum and all that stuff, because I mean, obviously, everything is based off of that.
And
So
I find the bouncing ball and pendulum, like, I had to do that too in my first year at Sheridan.
yeah,
I'm like, this is so boring. Just
yeah,
give me a full character
yeah,
performance and I'll just start there. Like,
yeah. There's a
it's so
certain,
tempting to go get ahead, right?
of course, yeah. I mean, even when I was starting learning to do some stop motion stuff, like, I had like the Sticky Bones figure, which is like sitting over there, and I wanted to just like do that right away, or like animate like my action figures, and I was like, but no, I want to start the bouncing ball, because like,
You're so disciplined.
yeah. And I was working with some other friends at the time that we were doing like this little trio of us trying to learn it. But no, I think, look, I mean, yes, it's like the bouncing ball is boring, if you will, compared to like other stuff. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, we are all of our movements, especially when you analyze animated stuff or any live action, it's all based off of that. So
Yeah, you should get a plaque and put it on your above your door that says "We are all bouncing balls" or something.
right,
Like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Or just put a sticky note on your monitor that says everything is a bouncing ball. It's true.
Yeah,
It's true.
right. So tell me, okay, so like you're starting at a Blue Sky, and once you're working however many hours a day you're working, 8 hours a day, you're just naturally improving anyways, because that's all you're doing. But what's going through your mind to actively, at the first couple of months, you're anxious about this new job and you want to stay on? Like, what was going on in your mind to make sure that you were becoming like an invaluable part of Blue Sky and staying there for 13 years? And, you said you're working into your way into like leadership roles and supervising roles. Like, what were you actively doing to improve your skills to be such a valuable asset?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was asking just like a lot of questions to the people above me, and those whose like work I just was just like in awestruck by.
So you like go up to an amazing anime and you're like, hey, can I just borrow you for 5 minutes? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I had this really good friend, Luis at Blue Sky, who was like, he was like my mentor, I guess, and he's an amazing animator, and he really like helped me a lot through my time there. And yeah, it's just yeah, getting other people's eyes on your work, or just like say like, oh, how would you do this? How did you do this? Like, your shot. While I was at Blue Sky and later in my career, I ended up starting these like talk similar to how you're doing, like podcasting, but it wasn't really a podcast. It was like a workflow Wednesday, I called it, or like
oh, nice.
talking shots, where like I would literally just like have an animator in the room. Like the Workflow Wednesday was like bringing them into our theater room and just like saying like, oh, you have an interesting workflow. Like you're a layered animator, or you're like a straight ahead animator, or you're a, I don't know how you animate, but like how you animate is amazing. And like, just like saying like, hey, can you just like sit down, like walk us through your work, your mindset. And so I was doing a lot of that because I just really, still to this day, I'm just very like continuing education focused, just want to like learn as much as I can and soak up as much as I can. The talking shots was a similar thing, just like breaking down a shot, like from like planning to like final. So yeah, but back then, like when I started, it was like a lot of that, like asking questions, and then, staying late, maybe when I wasn't supposed to, just trying to like learn as much as I could, and just try to make the best result possible. But we were all in it together, and everyone was super helpful back then. Everyone was really trying to push everyone and make you the best you could be, at least in my experience. And I don't know, I feel like that's what you sort of have to do when you're in that environment, is just pick other people's minds and just.
So let me ask you this. Let's do a Workflow Wednesday right now with you. What is, you've been working for almost 2 decades
by the way, but
in the industry. You're working on like box office hits and all this stuff, and you've learned all these things from other animators. What is your streamlined process, superior, get this shot done that looks amazing, tricks and tips that you can share here?
Superior, amazing, I don't know, and I tried my best, but thank you. I don't know, it's a combination of things really, and I feel like my workflow is always evolving, but I definitely like to do a lot of research right up front. I mean, I tell my students like that's a big part of what I do.
So you get a shot and you're like, I'm not going to touch it at all.
Not yeah.
I'm going to go to YouTube.
Yeah, so like definitely getting a kickoff or a launch brief, whatever you want to call it, from the director, supervisors, whatever it is, and asking questions. Why is the character feeling this way? All the typical things you'd want to ask. To understand the character or the moment the best you can. And then, yeah, definitely going into research phase. So whether that's like literally writing down questions and trying to answer them, or doing thumbnails of like just envisioning it in my head. I'm definitely a big person shooting video reference. I like to, get in front of the camera, act it out, do a lot of different ideas. Think about the subtext of a shot. That really informs me a lot about what the character's really thinking, as opposed to what they're saying. I go into YouTube looking for clips, similar moments. I feel like not many people probably know about this website, but I'll tell you all out there in podcast land. It's called tvtropes.org. tvtropes.org, and it's basically like a Wikipedia for like tropes, which is like commonly used things in the storytelling world, I guess. So I like, if I'll just literally like search within that Wikipedia kind of page, I'll say like a character that's crying, or a character that has like one of those like no moments, or like happy character sitting on a bench eating an apple. I mean, I don't just like, I try to get like as specific as I can, sometimes as general as I can, basically just like find other moments where it's a character that like has gone through something similar, because at the end of the day, like we're telling these stories, but like a lot of these moments have been told before, just in different ways. But it's, like storytelling goes back like forever, right? So it's like these kind of moments have lived on in storytelling before. And anyway, I just look for inspiration essentially. And this website has some great stuff where it's like, this kind of moment has appeared in a comic, or this kind of moment has appeared in like a live action film or an animated film. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that. And like, I'll go to YouTube and try to find that, not like copy that moment, but try to just get inspiration from it.
I just went to tvtropes.org, and they have like a featured trope, and it's of a giant crying, and their tears like showering humans, and it has like Bender from Futurama. He's like giant and he's crying, and it's like exploding everywhere.
Yeah, and it
looks like you can search literally anything.
Oh God, it's a never-ending rabbit hole.
Man, I'm going to use this all the time. I've never seen this before, but it makes so much sense, because there's so many times where I'm like, this is the thing in my mind, like, I don't know, devil angels sitting on shoulders, and I'm like, I can't think of a single moment in TV where I could reference this, but if I type it in here, it'll just give me those references.
Yeah, it's not like always 100% of the time I find what I need, and sometimes it's literally just like, it just sparks other ideas. it's great, and there's a whole thing on the side of like characterizations and narratives and like subcategories, and you could go on forever and ever and ever in it. But anyway, so like research is my first thing. Video reference is a big thing, and then yeah. So I forgot what we were talking about. So workflow. Um, I like to work pose to pose mainly, which I know is very different than stop motion. I remember when I first started to learn that, I was like, "Can you work pose to pose in stop motion?" I know you technically could, but it'd be very hard and not recommended. Yeah, I used to be strictly like a stepped key animator. I don't know if you know much about step keys or CG. Do you know much?
I've done it a little bit with,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, stepped keys is basically like you hit a pose, there's no interpolation, and then like you hit another pose. And more recently, I've started blocking things out in spline where still in full poses in a more straight ahead way, but just hitting my key poses within my video reference. I'll tend to have my video reference in Maya, which could be a good thing and a bad thing. A good thing in that like it's just there, easy to refer to. A bad thing that you could be more tempted to like copy it, which I definitely try not to, and try to push things as much as I can, and then like go back and like fill in all the breakdowns and betweens and secondary breakdowns, all that kind of stuff. And then yeah, just like show it to like a supervisor or a colleague if I can before, depending on the schedule. But definitely try to get as much feedback as I can from colleagues, and then yeah, get whatever notes. Address those notes. I'm sure it works the same in most other studios or industry in stop motion. I know it's a little different there, but yeah, then just keep on refining until you go and just spline, polish. I do like to work layered as well, which is it can be done many different ways, from starting like the root out, just getting the core of the motion, especially if it's like an energetic shot. So working on that root where it's essentially a bouncing ball, moving through space, and then like layering on like the spine, and then layering on the head, and layering on the arms and the hands. Or doing it in another way, which is another more straight ahead way as well, where it's like working like in phrases where you're starting with, let's say, the biggest movement of a action. So if it's like a character, I don't know, like leaning to the right, like, or taking a step to the right, I might start with the hips, and then like, let's say they sit down, I might like start with the hips in that motion, and then like get like the foot to plant, because I know that foot needs to land, and then come back to the spine and the head just for that weight shift to the right. And then when they sit, I'm like, okay, what's the biggest move there? Okay, well, maybe they put their hand on their chair first. So then I'll animate just the hand, get that feeling right. And then I'll animate just the root, and then the spine and the head, and just making it all feel connective. And the thing that's like not great about that method, but is what's not great about the method, is that things could feel like a little bit disconnected, because you're literally like layering things on and the pose doesn't come right away. But what is great about the method is that it's a lot faster and cleaner, and using like less controls than working in pose to pose, like where you tend to like just key out the entire character. But I mean, there's so many ways to do it, and so many pros and cons. But that's really it. I mean, I hope it turns out great in the end. That's
What is your quota on like for like an average week?
When I was at Blue Sky, it was like, I think like 70 to 80 frames per week, which I tried to hit the best that I could. It depends on the shot too. I mean, you could have something
80
that's
frames
like,
a week.
yeah, I think that's what it was. If
Like at 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
So you're doing like 3 or 4 seconds a week.
Yes, something like that. I feel like, if I'm mistaken, and in podcast land, if someone from Blue Sky is listening and you want to comment.
Wow. I mean, so like TV production, at least for stop motion, we're looking at like 9-10 seconds a day.
I know. I've like talked
Like we
to
don't even
those
have
people.
time to like redo something if it.
I know, or let alone plan it. I know you guys just like sometimes just go and like.
Yeah, like even just like if I'm taking too much time like acting it out myself, I'm like, I just need to get into frames.
I know. It's and the
Wow.
guys.
So
All of you guys
really have a lot of time to like really think through and polish things then.
Yeah. And that's why I'm still like amazed, like at least with TV stuff like that you guys do, is just some of the quality that comes out. It's still amazing. But yeah, we definitely have time, but it's still like not a lot of time, because it also depends on the complexity of the shot. It's you could have a character that's one single character that's maybe it's just like a close up or medium shot, and like it's just like a reaction shot, and that can be something that, okay, well, that's maybe 34 frames or something. We're obviously going to get that in a lot quicker. And you can have the same thing, but like one character shot, but they might be like jumping like crazy in in screen space, or doing some crazy interaction with another character or multiple characters, and it increases the complexity. So the supervisors would always adjust based on that. But I mean, I think on average, like that was what it was. It was like 70
Yeah.
frames per week.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, there's a number of different types of successes you can attribute to like a shot getting approved, I guess. Like one would be like, you really capture who this character is, and even maybe you went off direction a little bit, but it just like, the character so well, like works. Or another one could just be like, they got from point A to B exactly how it was done. Is there like something going through your mind whenever you get a shot being like, this is my ultimate goal with completing this shot, and that's how I know that I'm on the right path, versus like, bringing in the director or your supervisor like every couple of poses to be like, is this okay? Like,
Yeah.
how are you
Yeah, I
gaining
think
the confidence to pursue that on your own?
Yeah, so I think I definitely, when I first started out, I definitely started that way, where I was asking a lot of questions, and I guess I didn't have the confidence to do those things where I was like, hey, like, what do you think of this pose? So I think that's something you definitely build up over time, as an artist, or an animator, or any kind of artist. But yeah, I think over time, what it just really came down to, and what I definitely just try to instill in my students when I'm teaching, is like, is it clear? Is the idea clear? And then am I believing this moment? I think that a lot of that comes through feedback from others. Again, showing your shot to your peers, or your supervisors, or whatever, helping them guide you in that right direction. But yeah, I think that's what I'm ultimately, my goal is in the end now. I mean, I still want like appealing poses and interesting and story, entertainment and ideas and performance choices and everything. But at the end of the day, like, it still has to be like an entertaining shot. So am I telling this, this shot, this story point, or this beat in the most entertaining, believable, sincere way possible? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, totally. I really like what you said about, being clear and is it believable of what's happening? Because
Yeah.
if it's not, then it kind of sticks out
Yeah.
versus the shots that it's around. I'm wondering also, like, just as you're talking, how do you, I don't take this the wrong way, but like, how do you fight monotony after doing, character animation for over a decade?
Uh, Monotony. So like just doing the,
Well, it's
well,
just becoming you're just becoming a job, and
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It changes. It's different stories. It's different characters. I mean, yeah, like you could be working on the same shot for a long time, or the same movie for like 9 months, a year, whatever. But I feel like, I don't know, for me at least, I'm just constantly learning and growing throughout. And I feel like there's just always just some excitement, and just the people you're with and you hang out with and you meet, and that sort of changes up that monotony, I guess. And I've taken up other things on the side, like, the stop motion stuff that I mean, it was more recent than anything. But then, I don't know. It's just trying to stay inspired by, like, just look. I mean, that's again why continuing education is a big thing for me. Like, I just like watch a lot of YouTube tutorials of like different kinds of things. Like, and I feel like that's what sort of changes things for me. I mean, I don't know. I feel like nothing else has really sparked an interest in me in the animation world besides like character animation at this point. I mean, again, some storytelling stuff. I'm starting to think of more of my own ideas, but I don't know. It's just that spark of. I mean, I'm sure you feel the same thing too. Bringing a character to life. It's just like just super exciting, and then it just
no,
takes
I
away
love
the.
it, especially in stop motion specifically, where you like literally take this dead thing that
Yeah,
you can put in your hand and move around, and it just looks dead, and then suddenly you like put a few frames behind it and it's alive. It's
I
just
know.
very
It's
strange.
crazy. Yeah,
So okay, so maybe we should talk about some other parts of your career too, because you're also, you're teaching at anim school for a while now, and like you also said you wanted to move into like supervisory roles. What is something like, what has compelled you to teach, and like also, what is something that you see new students really needing to learn from what you've experienced as well? Like, what's the number one thing? I
yeah.
guess this is a whole bunch of questions,
That's
but
okay.
first of all,
Um,
what's the number one thing that you see new animators needing to work on that you have to figure out yourself?
well, I mean, I think the main thing that I've seen my students have to work on, because I'm teaching character performance right now, so it's just acting. It's like introduction to like dialogue and acting. So I think the main thing that they had to focus on and I point out is like body mechanics, which they've learned before, and a lot of good stuff has come out of their work. I think it's just a matter of perfecting things a little bit more and just thinking about weight and balance a little bit
So
more.
what are body mechanics to you then?
So like weight shifts, you know, how it balance, you know, believable balance in a character, making sure the character feels grounded. A lot of things that I point out to them is, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, you want your character to look good in the camera view, but, you know, definitely looking at it in the perspective view because we work in a 3D environment, which I'm actually curious. I would ask you about stop motion, how you guys treat that. Yeah, it's just like treating it from and making sure the character looks good in all views and perspective. Because like even I haven't worked in video games like just a little bit, but like I know everything has to look good from every angle there. So you know, just sort of treat it like that way.
So weight and balance and perspective. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, and like locomotion as well.
Say if a character's like reaching over in a shelf and they have to like move their whole body, you know, watching physics in the real world, you can just tell if something is off balance because it'll fall over. But in CG world, it's not going to. So there's a fine balance between like, you know, you're pushing the exaggeration a little bit and actually this looks like the weight is off. Is there a tip that you have when, you know, how do you treat weight in the body? Because like in CG, until maybe this already exists or like Unreal Engine or something where you just weight parts of the rig and it just figures it out for yourself. Like you're just creating that based on how you feel it looks, right? Is there tips that you have on creating good balance and weight?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, for balance, it really comes down to like, I mean, if you're literally just like standing straight up, and I can get up out of my chair, but maybe just be somewhere to sit down. If you're like, you know, standing up, like you want to make sure your weight is evenly distributed between your feet. If you're going to like shift your weight onto like one side, you want to make sure that like if you were to draw like a line from your chin or your neck all the way down to your foot, that line. We're on YouTube, so I could just try to show this really quick.
All right, so listen to this not on YouTube. Go to YouTube.
Can you still hear me if I take my headphones off for a second?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, I'll speak a little bit louder. Like if you're going to be standing up, you know, like my weight is like down straight to the floor. But if I'm going to shift my weight over to here, you know, my line goes from my chin all the way down.
So now you're shifted on your left foot, and the weight is between your chin all the way to the bottom.
What do you say?
Oh, sorry, you couldn't hear me.
No.
So first, you're normally distributed, and then you shifted your weight onto your left foot, and then the line from your chin goes down to the left.
Yeah. And one last thing I'll do, well, a demo for all the people watching that I tend to point out a lot is like counterbalance. Like if you're gonna like lean forward, you basically like your butt goes out when you lean forward. So if you're not going to have that in your CG character, if you don't pose that, it's going to look wrong. So if you're going to lean back, you know, your line goes this way, where you know your butt shoots out that way. So this kind of counterbalancing back and forward, leaning back and forward, is a big thing to pay attention to.
Yeah.
I think it probably applies to stop motion, I'm sure, as well as any 2D thing. But it's obviously in CG, you have the ability to pose that 3D character. So yes, there is no like weighted character that I know of, unless it's in like Unreal or whatever. Yeah, it's just important to just pay attention to those things, because even though like you're only seeing the character from like your camera view, you can definitely tell if those things are off. And I've been able to at least tell in my students' work that like, okay, let's open this up in your Maya file. Let's look at it in perspective. Okay, I see what's going on here. Feet aren't where they're supposed to be. You know, the character's like way leaned back or way leaned forward. And you can just tell what those things are off. So
okay, so like make sure you got the center of gravity pretty lined up, and then counterbalancing when you're leaning forward or back or reaching or something too. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it seems like simple stuff, but then you know, I know what it's like when you're actually animating and you're like, forget about this, and you're like, this character needs to reach over here in like 5 seconds, and you're like, you just have to bring him back. No, that's some good tips. Yeah. So tell me about Animschool. Like you've been teaching for a couple of years now?
It's been almost a year. I think I started in October of last year. So September of last year. And you had asked before what got me into teaching. So I guess I could answer that now. So I guess I was always interested in it, in teaching, but I guess I just never either found the time. You know, I have young kids, and I just thought it'd be nice to like sort of give back, if you will. And but I was also trying to pursue more of the, like I said, like those like lead and supervisory roles. So I felt like teaching would be like a good four-way, or what's the word? I don't know. Leeway. Yeah, step into that world of just like giving feedback to others and again directing, air quotes, if you will. Yeah, you know, and I learned a lot from it. It was, you know, a little intimidating at first, you know, just having students who, you know, are putting all their trust in you and everything, but I think that's normal. And then yeah, it's been really great ever since. I've been doing it for almost a year, and I'm teaching at Animschool right now, class 5 character performance. I think I'm on like my 4th or 5th class. I have like 9 students now, like from all over the world, and
Oh, wow.
different experience.
It's a pretty small class. Like that's is that typical?
I mean, for this school is, I think, even like when I was an animation mentor was too, and I feel like most of these schools try to keep the classes pretty small students. Just, I think it's good to give like, you know, as much one-to-one feedback if you can, or 1 to 9 or 9-to-1 feedback in this instance. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not like a lecture hall class in like college where you know, like you don't have that individual attention, and you know, there's reasons for that as well. But it's been great. I mean, I'm you know, teaching. I devised my own lectures, and then basically every week there's like a critique class and then a lecture class. So yeah, I just guide the students crafting their first dialogue piece. They choose an audio clip, and we just sort of, you know, they shoot video reference, come up with acting choices. We talk about it. Each week's like a new lesson on different principles of acting and eyes and brows and all that kind of stuff, and mouth animation. And yeah, it's good. So at the end, you know, hopefully they come out with like a really polished piece as much as it can be in the end. It's like 10 weeks, I think. So goes by fast.
Yeah. Well, you've come full circle now. You know, you were that guy getting taught by people in the industry, and now you're that guy in the industry teaching new students.
Yeah.
Tell me, you've hinted and talked about stop motion so much. Just tell me what's going on. What's going on with stop motion for you?
No, it's I'm not hinting. I just feel like it's part of the conversation. I don't know. There's something about it that has just piqued my interest. So basically, the way that it sort of came to be more of a, I guess, a realistic thing for me that I've pursued from a hobby standpoint, at least, is basically when we were working on our last production, we had some downtime at the studio at Blue Sky, and we had this time where it was like, okay, you know, let's sort of do like independent studies and just pick anything, you know, but it has to be related to like your field. Like, so whether it was like acting, or if you wanted to just take some acting online lessons, or figure drawing, or whatever. And
this is quote unquote sponsored by Blue Sky.
It's not really like they didn't pay for anything.
But they were like, it was
just basically like, you have this time, you know, just like make some good use of it, you know, to like strengthen your craft essentially.
Nice.
I thought maybe I was just going to just try to get better at like some facial animation stuff, or just, you know, do another test shot with one of the characters that we had. But I was talking to some of my friends, and I've always had an interest in it, and like little things on the side here and there. But they, two of the other guys, they were like, oh, like, yeah, we want to do stop motion animation. And I said, yeah, me too. So I had like a Sticky Bones character, and I brought that into work, and we basically, I forget how long it was, over maybe like 3 months or something. We sort of each just decided to like follow this little curriculum where we started with like a bouncing ball, and then I basically took the Sticky Bones apart. I did a bouncing ball, I did like a heavy ball. This is all like my Instagram if anyone wants to see it. And then I took the Sticky Bones apart and just made like the hips with the legs, and then just like a little walk cycle, which I was talking to some other stop motion guys on Instagram. I don't know if I talked to you back then, but I was talking to like Justin Rash and like Kevin Parry, which I'm sure you know well. And they were giving me some tips about the whole like rehearsal and the pop throughs and everything. And I was like, oh my God, that's like insane. You guys do this 3 times. But I did like my first like walk cycle, like as a pop through. And then I did it, I think on 2s, and I did it on 1s. And I was like, holy crap, like this is insane, but cool. And then, yeah, I did some other just like full body stuff, and then like some paper cutout stuff. And yeah, I just sort of became like hooked on it. Because to me, the reason why I really wanted to pursue it in the end, at least as a hobby or whatever, was just to get that tangibility of touching when I'm animating, because like there is an intangibility in CG. You know, like these characters are living on your screen, and that's great and all, but you can't like reach in there. And we were also at the time, I had a friend at Blue Sky who was pursuing like VR, and I was talking to him about that. I even tried that out a little bit, and I was liking that. I don't have a VR headset or anything at home, but that's something was that appealed to me as well. And there is like a program out there, I think called Maori. I'm not sure, but I think you can like um, animate in Maya with a VR headset. So I was like, that could be really cool, but also a little weird, you know. But that was all just part of like just wanting to like reach in, touch the character, and so yeah, with stop motion, that's what I did. So I don't know, like as you can see behind me, and I people in podcasts I can't see, but I have like all these toys that I collected over the years. So I feel like I just always wanted to like, I don't know, there's just something about holding these things and just like wanting to move them, and that like not many of them are very super articulated. Like I just got some Back to the Future ones. I was like, oh, maybe I'll animate those. But I just always wanted to just do that. And yeah, I learned. I was just talking again to like Justin and Kevin and yourself, and I know there's like a lot of more schools out now that are like online stuff that are pursuing teaching these classes. So I've looked into that a little bit. Timing wise, I don't think it's been working out, but yeah. And then over the pandemic, past year, I had done some things where I had a friend who created a short film called Spread the Love, which was similar to, I think, what Leica did in terms of the style. They did like, it was very beginning of the pandemic, and it was like characters like coming to the screen, like punching something, and then the screen wiped, and like character reacted, it got flipped back. So it was me and like, I don't know, maybe like 12 or 14 other animators or something, and we all did like something similar, not like punching, but it was like something coming to screen and then like getting sent away from screen. So I had one of the director of the film, Jess, she had reached out to me and said like, hey, you know, you interested in participating in this? Like, and I've been seeing you doing stop motion. So I was like, yeah, sure. And you know, I didn't have like so much time in the world, but like I wanted to do something like really cool. So I mean, I hadn't really done much with clay at that point. So I basically took like, it was like a heart related thing, like with love. And so I took like 8 or 9 clay balls and basically like had them drop from camera view, and basically had them like blend into each other. And then like this heart sort of like pumped and then, you know, shot out into screen. And that was like a big learning experience. I think I did it like in one night, but you know, I planned for it. I actually blocked it out on Maya first. So which might have been cheating, but I don't know. I mean, it was a part of the planning process. And I know like in TV, you guys just like, you just go, which again, like boggles my mind. But yeah, so I did Spheres of Maya, and like I timed it out to the soundtrack, and or I don't know if we had a soundtrack back then, and I just like created a heart, or I got like a TIFF or a PNG of one, and then just like brought it into Maya and had it come in, and then I sort of like laid that out in Dragon Frame. I had already known Dragon Frame from my stuff, time at Blue Sky with it at that point, and yeah. And then for Mother's Day, I created this thing for my wife, where I basically recorded my kids saying, "Happy Mother's Day, Mommy, we love you." And I created like little clay versions of them.
Yeah, that's really cute.
I don't know if you saw it.
Do you feel like working in stop motion even very briefly has changed how you work in CG at all? Because
So
you said you wanted to get something that was tangible, and it sounds like you're learning different methods of animating as well, because stop motion is very different than, you know, pose to pose, and
yeah,
you can only
totally.
do it once.
Yeah, I know. So it's funny. That's a question that I was asking a bunch of the stop motion people that I was reaching out to, because I was like, yeah, I mean, this must like help you. I know like Justin, like he works at like Blizzard, and
Yeah, he's like goes back and forth.
yeah, he's like a
like,
monster. And
constantly.
yeah,
Crazy.
Justin, if you're listening, you know how much I respect you. I've told you like a million times. So yeah, I think I had asked him that a bunch of times, and I don't remember what he said. I think he said definitely has influenced him, but yeah, I feel like anything that it did for me is it made me think of things in more. I mean, I've always paid attention to the 3D space, like that perspective view of the character, but it definitely made me more aware of like definitely the way the character looks in 3D space, like the balance stuff that I was talking about earlier. And then yeah, I feel like it's given me more sense of like a little bit of a flow of being able to understand where things need to be on the next frame. I mean, I'm not working like, I mean, I still work on like when I block things out, at least in Maya, it's like on fours at the least before I start like breaking it down or before I start splining. So I think in that sense, like it's given me more sense like, okay, I know this arm or leg or whatever needs to be on in this position for this frame based on some of the limited stuff that I've done with stop motion. And then vice versa. Um, yeah, I think it's given me, I mean, I feel like that's what I wanted to ask you about, because I feel like one thing that I've struggled a little bit with stop motion is just making sure that the character is fully balanced at all times. Because like, yes, the first pose that I create the character in, I'm like, okay, is the character balanced? I'm like, I'll look at it from all angles. But like when you're posing your characters, I know you're working very fast. Are you like, and again, I know it has to look great from camera, but are you conscious of the balance of the character in that 3D space? Like, is that something that you're?
That's something I've never really thought of. I mean, like from, I don't know how to
If
answer
the
this
characters
because
lean back too far, I mean, obviously it'll look weird. You
I
might
mean,
want to bring them forward, but like,
totally. I mean, my experience with like the TV show that I was just working on, Ultra City Smiths, it's like there's like what the director tells you, there's how you act it out, and then there's like how you perceive it in your mind. And then when you actually get to the character, it's like, okay, these are the limitations of what this puppet can actually do in this moment. Um, And I think when it comes to balance, like if for instance, like I can think of a time where I had to make a character like twirl around a pole and I ended up having to give him like a whole bunch of extra steps because he just was like swinging too low and it didn't make it, his like didn't, the physics didn't make sense. So then like in that moment, I'm like, it worked in the pop through because I'm
yeah,
just putting him around a pole, but like in actually animating him at 24 frames per second, I have to actually like refigure out physics in the moment, I guess. So there's often times where like I'll have a character reach, and then it turns out that they're like leaning too far, and I have to give them an extra step. So now they have to step forward,
yeah,
or they're like lifting something, and like sometimes you can't even push their butt back because there's something in the way,
right,
you can't move, or the rig doesn't go that way, so you end up hiding things and like using force perspective. Like I've definitely had a character pick up something and like bring it to his hat, like okay, one instance was a character had to tip his hat, but his like arm wouldn't go that way, and so I had to just like use force perspective
right,
to have the hand just like, if you change the view, his hand isn't even near his hat, it's like
yeah,
in front, but from the camera's view it looks like he's holding his hat
yeah.
when it's not actually, not, he
That
can't
was okay. That was okay with
even go
lighting.
back for that part.
That was okay with lighting too.
Yeah, it worked. I mean, it's like I feel like you're just, every frame is problem solving. When it comes to balance specifically, you're helped a little bit by gravity because
Mhm.
gravity will dictate, but
Yeah,
also your character's tied down too. So I don't know if I've been experienced enough to have to deal with this too much.
hmm,
Um,
yeah. It could be
so
just because I'm not as experienced in it. I mean, I did like a Gumby uh, thing also, where it was like a short that we did at work, and as part of like our downtime. And I just remember, and it even shows in my animation, but like he just slowly just keeps on like leaning to the right, and
oh yeah.
and I'm just like, oh well, I hope.
Clay is the worst for that. But
Yeah,
I almost feel like there's a lot of forgiveness in stop motion specifically when it
yeah,
comes to physics and reality. Because in CG, you're trying to, especially with like feature films, you're trying to replicate physics to a
yeah,
T, in like the world that you're creating, because you don't want to have characters feel floaty. But in stop motion, some of my walk cycles feel really floaty because I wasn't able to get that like proper hip movement. But
yeah,
I think what happens is when somebody's watching it, they're just like, holy crap, these puppets are alive.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I definitely feel you. Yeah,
And I haven't worked at Leica either, because Leica would, that doesn't fly at Leica for creating real, they want to create like real physics. So
yeah, yeah. I know. It's awesome stuff. But yeah, no, it's been a fun thing to do. I mean, I haven't lately had as much time for it as I wanted because of my new job that I started. But
where do you want to go with stop motion? Like, is this something you want to keep picking up? Like, is it helping for your current job? Are you going to become
uh,
like a stop motion animator? Are you
no, I
going
mean,
to
for
make
my
your wife more Mother's Day videos?
yeah. Well, it's funny. This past Mother's Day, I was like, I could make you another stop motion thing, and she's like, no. I mean, it was nice. And she loved it. No, I don't know. I definitely feel like it's something that I'd like to just pursue more on the side. I don't know if I can make it as a full-time career, just like living situation and everything. But when we had when we got Blue Sky got closed down, I did have, again, I was like just applying like everywhere. And then there was someone who reached out, who had a contact with Matt Steinreich, that's how you say his last name, right? At Robot Chicken. And he had visited the studio with Seth Green like years back, for something else, and I had sort of just got his contact information, and I had, we were sort of in touch through like Twitter over the years, and anyway, so she was like friendly with him, I think, through development, and she's like, oh hey, if anyone does like stop motion, like reach out to Matt and whatever. So I like, I don't know, just because I was just like, okay, why not? I just like sent my stop motion reel, which I don't know if it's like a reel. It's just like exercises or little fun things that I've done. And I sent along my CG reel as well, because I was like, but this is how I can animate, but maybe not in stop motion yet. I don't know. And yeah, I was in touch with someone from the department there, and it didn't go anywhere in the end, but it was sort of like, could you possibly be out here at a certain time? And I didn't end up.
So say they would have been like, hey, love your reel. We have an opening for like a junior stop motion animator next month. What would you have done?
I mean, I had a conversation with my wife about it, and I said like, this is something that I would, if it works out, and that things just pan out different ways. I just said like, this is something that I'd like to do.
So quit your job.
Well, no. I mean, I don't know if I would, because again, I didn't have a job at
hiatus. You're right.
Yeah, at that point, I didn't have a job, so I was like.
So what if they call you back? So you said something didn't work out. What if they? I mean, I don't know. You have to answer this, but what if they call you back tomorrow and they're like, "Hey, we have a 4-month contract. Would you like to come?"
I think it would. I don't know. That's a hard question. Is I'm employed currently, so no, I love where I work right now. And no, it'd be tempting, of course. To animate in stop motion, just to get my feet wet in it. But I think maybe at some point down the road, I definitely.
What if they said you can work with Terry Ivo?
Well then, okay. Just, no, but I mean, I think I'm in a good spot where I am now, and I'm really enjoying it. And the people are really nice, and the projects are cool. And no, I think it's definitely something that I'd like to pursue again more on the.
I think it's super cool that you're a full-time CG animator and have a hobby as a stop motion animator. That's like, that seems like a lot of work to me.
No, and look, I mean, I give you guys like a ton of credit. I mean, I like my whole Instagram follow people that I follow is all stop motion people, and like I just am amazed by what you guys do and the time that you do it in, and yeah, it's just incredible. So I know it's hard. It's totally hard. And when I do it like on the side and I'm like, I have some time to do it, I'm just like, oh, it's hard, but it's so cool. And
but it can also be super easy. Like you film those little balls turning into a heart in one night. Like it's no problem to get your camera just recording and take whatever you've got available and just animate something really quickly. Like it doesn't have to be a whole production.
Yeah, I actually used my kids as I animated my kids last year, like just with my iPhone, like stop motion studio, whatever. And it's like anything around the house. You can do whatever. That's definitely what's cool about it. It's fun.
So do you feel like you've reached just coming full circle with the chat, I guess, you feel like you've reached a point of stability that you're going to stick with for a while now after this kind of, you studied really hard to get in, then you had a great tenure at Blue Sky, then you had a big hiccup, and now you're back in the swing of things, potentially seeking like supervisory roles, and you're also teaching on the side.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like things are stable now. Like, I mean, you never know. I mean, I've been at Illumination for almost a little over 2 months, and it's been great so far. And I'm, have definitely some time ahead of me there. I hope that it works out. I mean, we're in a new world right now where COVID has allowed for remote work, and I know it's existed before, but I think it's becoming more accepting. I mean, I just hope studios in general see the benefit of it, just being able to like get a wider talent pool from anywhere in the world. I mean, look, do I miss being in a studio with my friends and the creative environment that I had with the cool cubicles that we had and people running around on scooters and all that kind of stuff, or scootering around on scooters. Like, yeah, I mean, but I mean, I've also been away from that for like over like a year and a half now, and I'm
I mean, you can run around a scooter around your office at home, like
yes,
nobody's
yeah,
stopping you.
yeah. I have a treadmill right over here, so which my stop motion table is resting on right now, so it's not getting much use. But no, I feel good where I am right now. I feel like
Good.
learned a lot throughout the time that from the studio closure to the interview process to landing on my feet, and yeah, I feel like things are headed in a good way. I feel like there's a lot out there, and
Nice.
I'm excited to see where it goes. And yeah, I mean, Illumination's awesome, so we'll see. Hopefully that works out.
Well, that's really good to hear. Maybe as we're like wrapping up, is there anything that you specifically wanted to share or even ask, I guess, of
Yeah,
me?
I knew
Now that
you
you
were going to ask that because you asked that at the end of every podcast.
you're
um,
prepared.
yeah, no. So you actually just mentioned before is that with your stop motion stuff that you do, you had the chance to do pop throughs in the stuff
Um,
because I
It
heard that TV is
so the
almost
show that I was just on, it depends on how complicated the shot was, because sometimes there is a very complicated like motion capture camera shot where like a camera's
right.
coming around a corner and like panning down a street and then going up. And then you have like, for instance, like I had that, and then the character was also running around the corner and like bumps into somebody. And
Uh,
so like to get the timing right for the motion capture camera and like the focus where it should be and everything, you have to do a pop through,
mhm.
by frame 80, they should be here. By frame 200, I expect them to be here. And then the camera guy comes in and sets the focus marks. So sometimes you have the opportunity to do a pop through, but like on 95% of my shots, you just go right into it. And you, for me, like, especially with walk cycles, I usually need to take about 30 frames and then delete them just to figure out
Yeah.
how these characters are moving, what the quirks are, how they interact with the space, because you're just like with stop motion, you can't once you animate something, you can't go back at all. So
Yeah.
for my process, I usually just like act it out a little bit,
Mhm.
try to do a pop through of maybe 30 frames if I'm lucky and I have the time,
Mhm.
delete them and then start over again. But
Yeah.
like 95% of the time, you just, character has to do this in this scene and you just go for it and
Mm.
hope for the best.
Yeah. And it's just sort of like a feeling as you're going. That's just
Yeah, but I actually didn't learn even what a pop through was until halfway through making my short, The Silly Duck Wizard, when
yeah.
Dale uh,
Hayward.
Hayward, sorry,
Mhm.
yeah, thank you. He randomly came to Toronto, and I had made a connection with him before, and he was like, "Hey, I'm coming to Toronto." So I just like grabbed lunch with him, and I was showing him some of the shots, and I was like, "It's so tough. I've had to redo this like 10 times because I don't really know where he's." It was like the intro of him jumping in because I'm like, I don't know where he's gonna land, and he lands
Yeah.
somewhere different each time. He's like, "Do a pop through," and that like blew my mind because in my
Yeah.
mind I'm like, why on earth would I animate something just to throw this away and animate it
I
later?
know. That's like the interesting thing about it because when I like sometimes like at least recently when I wanted to do something, I'm like, I don't want to just like go in there because I don't want to like it to like suck and have to like redo it. But like I know that's part of like
Yeah.
the experience. And then I'm like, but like for a pop through, I'm like, well, at least I'll have this planning and it's help. But then I'm like, oh, I just want to like animate the character and just do it.
Right. It takes some of the fun out. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love animating straight ahead and just seeing what happens and like
yeah,
problem solving each frame. And
yeah,
also like, pop throughs wear and tear on the character. You might break something that now you have to go and fix it or whatever. So, but
yeah,
I ended up doing pop throughs on the rest of the Silly Duck Wizard and I
yeah.
was like, well, this is a way better way of animating that I
Yeah.
never thought of on my own.
Yeah, and that's an
Um,
amazing short, by the way. That's how I found out about you before the podcast, even because I saw your short. And I'm like, whoa, this is so cool.
well,
And
hello, thank you.
yeah, and even your thing you did recently with the storybook. I don't know, it was a commercial for something that you did,
Oh,
or
it was for a show called Let's Go Luna. It's
oh yeah, oh wow, yeah. It's,
yeah.
I know that my kids watch that,
Yeah.
and that was awesome. Yeah, you mentioned the camera thing before about the motion capture camera, whatever it is. Like I was watching Modoc recently, and like they have that right. It's like a moving camera.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was done in post.
No,
That's crazy.
it's a very tedious, is even more tedious way to animate, for instance, because like normally you take a frame and you click drag and frame enter and
Yeah,
it takes a shot. But with the motion camera, you actually, you take your frame, then you have to wait for the camera to like do
adjust.
its thing and then reposition itself and do backlash and then take the picture and then also it's harder to animate because you can't tell exactly like your movement from one frame to the next because the camera is also moving. So
Right.
so you have to just kind of trust the process. For
Yeah.
instance, like I learned if the camera's moving and I'm having a character walk, I shouldn't like look at the screen and figure out where they're walking based on the screen because the character's moving too, and then they'll end up walking kind of a little bit janky because that you're trying to keep up with the camera versus like just kind of using my own intuition, like not animating blind, but just animating without thinking of the camera movement, how I would have them move forward anyways,
Mhm.
so that it appears more like they're walking at a more natural pace rather than like walking at the pace that trying to keep up with the camera, if that makes
That
sense.
makes sense. I mean, you're not using like a what's the gauge, a wire gauge, or the.
I mean, yeah, I was using,
Oh,
there were a
you
lot
are?
of shots where I was using a gauge
Yeah.
specifically because normally I would just draw on the, like Dragon Frame has like tools where you can draw on
Yeah.
the screen and like space out your stuff that way. But you can't do that when the camera's moving as well because then the spacing is all off because
Yeah.
the camera's moving at, increasing speed or slowing speed and then your walk is
Yeah.
all off too.
Yeah. That's
So
crazy.
it's like it was like every and also like when the camera is moving and specifically walk cycles, like I'd actually have to take a measuring tape and like space out each frame movement. Like I remember there was this character on a walking rig and I had to move them like 1.5 millimeters every frame to like keep up with the camera. So it's like you're animating naturally, but then also sliding this character like 1.5 millimeter. It's like,
Yeah.
it's very mathematical.
Yeah, I don't even think I'd be able to do that because we don't use the metric system in the US. I'd be like inches, maybe.
Yeah, well, inches, whatever, just like, measure over to the other
I know, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
side.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I saw the Modoc thing, I was like, "Whoa, this is so different. I've never seen this kind of camera movement before." And then to find out that it wasn't done in post, like,
Yeah, no, it's so cool though. Like you have and the rig is like, I don't know, the size of two desks. Like it's like weighted down and it's on these
yeah,
giant arms and it's got all these motors and it's like, it's very complicated and intimidating every time I'm on a shot with a motion camera, but it's also so cool because you're like, you have a pan in over the set and it just looks great. Like,
yeah. Well, I definitely like to go to like a stop motion studio and even just like watch and just like I know I could watch an animator animate their shot in real time because it literally is a slow
well, if it
process. I
wasn't,
know.
you could probably just go to like, I don't know, Stupid Buddy in Burbank and be like, hi guys, like,
If I'm ever in
what's
California.
up? But COVID complicates that right
Yeah, I
now.
know. But that's why I enjoy like just watching like behind the scenes stuff and it's just cool. But yeah.
Yeah. Anything else that you wanted to ask me or share yourself?
No, nothing else not that I could think of. If I do, I'll just message you. But
Sure. Yeah.
but thank you so much. This has been really awesome. And I think, and I know we didn't talk about this, but you mentioned this before in your podcast, the fact that you made such a big career change after business and everything and doing stop motion, and you're so good at it. And like, I mean, your future is, I'm sure, very bright.
Oh my gosh, you're making me
I give
blush here.
lots of credit for doing that. And yeah, thanks again for doing this awesome podcast. Because I mean, like I said, like I listened to a bunch of them and I've learned a lot from a bunch of people from various parts of the industries, and it's been great. So thank you for having me, and keep
Thank
doing
you
it.
so much for saying that. It means a lot to me. It makes me really happy that you've listened and learned from this podcast as well. Like that's like one of the really cool things I love about this podcast is just how it connects people all over the world in animation. Like people have emailed me from like from Egypt, for
I
instance.
know I listened to that one
Like
recently.
Dina, that's how she was on the
Yeah.
podcast. She emailed me and she's like, I listened to this and it's helped me start my own studio. And it's like, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
Their stuff is incredible too. So
yeah, and I absolutely love connecting with people like yourself and hearing your career journeys too, because it's given me, like, I started this podcast before I had done really anything in animation. Like I just had put together a portfolio to go to Sheridan College. And then like a month later, I was at a conference being like, I don't know anybody, I have nothing to show. I want to connect with people. And like hearing career journeys like yourselves and like the skills you learned has given me so much confidence in pursuing the things that I have done. So like, I don't know if I would be where I am now without this well, for sure I wouldn't, because the podcast, some connections I made on it directly led to me getting work. So
I'm sure you would have
there's,
been all right, man.
there's that too. But I'm so happy that you found this podcast useful, and
Yeah,
thank
no,
you
it's
so much
great.
for coming on as well. Like
Yeah.
I've loved chatting, and I've been following you on Instagram, and I think it's really cool what you're doing in stop motion as well as in CG. And I've been seeing, you posted your old demo reel on it, and I saw it
Oh,
on LinkedIn, I
God.
think, or maybe it's
No,
Facebook.
on Facebook, yeah. I don't want
And
to.
it's just cool to see how far people have come, and such as
Yeah.
yourself. Like you're doing real cool stuff these days. So
Thanks. Yeah.
thank you
I
so
hope to
much.
have some more stop motion stuff on there soon.
Yeah. Send it to me.
Especially after this chat, it's inspired me to like want to get back in there. So
Yeah, please. You already showed me your little setup, so now I need to see you
yeah.
make something tonight after you're done
Uh,
the podcast.
yes. I will animate this whole podcast.
Yeah. Oh, please, if you do, well, I'll talk to it'll come out in a year, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much. And if you're listening and you want to, follow or get in touch with Justin, you can do so best by contacting him through Instagram, which is jweg, or Twitter, which is Justin Weg. And I'll include links to both of those places in the description of this chat. And thank you so much for listening. That's all for now. Okay, bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.